Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first part of our co-op dialogue series where we'll be talking to students, we'll be talking to alumni, we'll be talking to parents, and getting their perspectives on the Northeastern Co-op program in celebration of 115 years of the Northeastern Co-op program. I'm here today with Amelia Brooks, who is an incredibly accomplished student, an incredibly accomplished Husky. If you have been on campus, you have been near something that Amelia has been involved in. We're going to talk about her experiences on campus. We're going to talk about both of her co-op experiences and how they sort of influence each other. And on top of that, we're going to just get to know Amelia a little bit. So, welcome, Amelia.
Thanks so much for having me. I can't wait to talk. I was like, wow, she's talking about me?
Oh, yeah, we're talking about you.
I'm so excited.
I mean, your resume is one of the most impressive resumes I've seen
Thank
in
you.
your fourth year.
That's so sweet. I work really hard on it.
Yeah. Now, I'd love to talk about the co-op.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you're a fourth year and you've had two co-ops at this point. So when was your first co-op?
My first co-op was in my second year.
Okay.
So it was I believe my fourth semester in the spring, and I started in January, and I was so nervous. It was my first corporate experience, and I had done things in the past, like I said, with extracurriculars and student organizations. So I felt very confident going in about my skills and about what I could bring to the table. But there's nothing like going up that elevator the first day alone, and you're like, oh my gosh, what is this going to be? My first co-op, I worked at Immuta, which is a data security company in Seaport, and they were a much smaller business, about 300 employees. Okay. And I was actually the only co-op in the whole company.
Wow.
Which is very different from what a lot of people have that experience in. Right now, I'm working at Wayfair, and there's a cohort of 88 of us. So really big difference from 1 to 88.
Other side of the pendulum for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's two completely different experiences. Smaller company, bigger company. Yeah. But I did it on purpose because I wanted to see within myself, do I like a more wider scope in the things that I'm doing, a more generalist role at Immuta rather than Wayfair? I'm much more specific and niche into what I'm doing. Okay. So going back to your original question about Immuta, I worked in people programs. So I did a lot of work. They called it the people team instead of HR. Okay. So I worked a lot on everything HR, very generalist role. So I had a lot of impact there. And really my first day, like I said, I was so nervous. But the best thing about co-op employers is that they know exactly who they're getting when they accept a co-op. Right. They know they're getting a student from Northeastern, one of the best schools ever, and they know they're getting someone who might not have had any corporate experience before in their lives. So they're so accommodating. So they welcomed me with open arms. They really built me up from the foundation of this is Immuta, this is the co-op, this is what you're doing. It's very specific, and I got to make so much impact while I was there.
So how did you come across that co-op? Because I think that a lot of students are always looking to make that initial jump into the co-op program. So what was that experience like?
It was interesting because, so before your very first co-op, you go on a co-op preparation class. Oh, okay. And that class teaches you all about, how to do a resume, how to do an interview, cover letter, things like that. So they're really prepping you for that stage, and they're supporting you in the application process. So there's this whole, website platform for co-op employers and co-op seeking students. So employers can post jobs and students can apply to them. So it's very exclusive to Northeastern. Okay. So we are able to be the only applicants sometimes for these positions, which gives us a leg up overall for everything. But the application process was so simple. I mean, really, I clicked apply and my resume goes in there. And from there, they reach out if they're interested. I had about one interview and then a panel interview, and then I got the offer.
So what I want to know is, what was Amelia like going into Immuta opposed to leaving Immuta?
Yeah, going into Immuta, I was nervous. I was confident about my skills because of my experience in, student organizations. But going into corporate world is so much different than doing a student organization. And going into Immuta, I felt confident because I knew that the people that worked there chose to have a Northeastern co-op on their team. Yeah. They knew exactly what they were signing up for. They knew that they were choosing from one of the best schools around, and they knew that they were having someone who didn't have any, corporate experience before. So while I was nervous, they weren't. They knew exactly what was happening. They were excited for me. And once I saw that, I got excited. So I just jumped right in. I did as much stuff as I could. And when I left, I felt so confident in myself. I've never been that confident in my skills, in what I bring to the table. And that has really changed everything for me. It changed how I applied to co-op for my second round. It changed what classes I was interested in. And it'll definitely define what I do after I graduate. Because I think it's a free trial into the corporate world.
I like that. I like that a lot. A free trial into the corporate world. So how would you say that it influenced your class decisions?
I think when you go on a co-op, you learn a lot about what you love and what you don't. And I think when in between your two co-ops, if you do two, you will take some classes in between. I never knew why you couldn't do some back-to-back, but really that learning in between is essential for the level of awareness that you need for a second co-op. When you have your second co-op, they're really ready for you to have that knowledge for your first co-op, from your first co-op. So the classes in between really help you get extra knowledge, but also say, maybe I don't want to take that elective on legal HR compliance when I could take something that I knew I loved.
That's really interesting that the second co-op is, aware that.
Yes.
So it's like a weird, in a way, it's like parallel building blocks.
Yeah, no, 100%. And some people do 3 co-ops where, that third level, it's like basically like you graduated.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've been at Wayfair now for about a month?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, over a month now.
I mean, you threw the number out earlier, and it's 88 co-ops this cycle, which is truly mind-blowing. And,
I know.
To the audience, don't let that number fool you. This is a very competitive and coveted co-op program. Now, that being said, what was that process like?
That process for applying to Wayfair, it's much, like you said, it's much more competitive. When you get into the bigger companies, the big names that people know, and the big co-op cohorts that people know, Wayfair, BCG, places like that have a lot of co-ops, it's very competitive. So going into that, it's, co-op application, they make it so easy for us. Really, sometimes you just drop your resume and that's it. And then, that's on the recruiting team to figure out who and what. But the application process was so simple. And having that first co-op experience, having, the knowledge that I had, I went into the interview, it's like the millionth interview that you've done. You do other interviews with co-ops for your first and your second. And Wayfair knew that this was my second co-op. In the interview, I got really great feedback about having actual projects and real experience to tie back into. Sometimes, when students graduate at other schools, they talk about club experience or part-time jobs. But I'm able to discuss real impact that I've made at real corporate companies that influenced, ROI, that influenced employees, that influenced real things.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up because, off camera, we were talking a little bit about Wayfair and what you're doing day to day. And I think it's incredible that you are taking on responsibility. You want to talk a little bit about your Texas trip real quick?
So I'm so excited. I'm going to Texas next month, and I'm leading a project that Wayfair has historically done. So Home for Our Troops is a nonprofit organization that builds homes for severely injured veterans. And every year, Wayfair furnishes one of those houses completely for the veteran. And this year, we're furnishing another house for them, and I'm going to Texas to project manage that whole thing. To, the installation, to the grand reveal, to interviewing the veteran, running all the logistics for that, and I'm heading up the whole project.
Congratulations.
So Thank you so much.
I feel like this is foreshadowing for what you're going to do in the future.
I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. So what is your official title at Wayfair?
At Wayfair, I'm a Purpose and Inclusion Co-op.
Purpose and Inclusion.
Yes.
So why the pivot? Why the pivot from people programs to purpose and inclusion?
Yeah, so that's a great question.
Or are they more similar than I think?
They're definitely more similar than you think.
Okay.
They both fall under the traditional HR. I like to call it people operations. But at Immuta, that was a much more generalist role. So people programs really was just an HR, people programs, people operations co-op that did a lot of things. Wayfair, there's so many more people, there's so many more employees that the scope is much more narrow into what you actually do day to day. So I was placed on the purpose and inclusion team still under HR, still doing the same sort of things, but now I'm more focused on purpose, which is corporate social responsibility, and partnering with people like Home for Our Troops and different nonprofits, and then inclusion underscopes DEI. So all the things that our company is doing in terms of how we can make our customers, our employees, everyone feel safe and included at work. And I've been running a lot of things for that too, which is really fun.
No, that's really impressive. So congratulations on all of that. Now, my next question, and, at the risk of you pitting your employers against each other.
Oh, geez.
No. I'm making that sound more dramatic than it actually is. But, I'd be interested in hearing you compare and contrast the skills that you developed at your first co-op to the skills that you developed at Wayfair.
I think it's hard to say because, like you said, I'm in my first month, second month-ish at Wayfair. And Immuta for me was, personally, I like a smaller company. I like being that close to employees, seeing people at lunch and knowing exactly what they do, knowing their name, having that tight connection. And I like making a much bigger impact. I've learned that I'm a builder. I like starting from the bottom and working my way up. Right now, I feel like I'm a fixer, taking things that have previously been built and tooling them, making them a little tinker, making them better. And I'm a builder. So I like working at smaller companies. I like building up that foundation and then just keep pushing it forward. So for me, I can't say, and I won't say.
That's fine.
But I think I've definitely learned a lot from both. But both, even though I prefer a small company and right now I'm at a huge company, the skill set is different. Things that I've done exactly at Immuta and at Wayfair, I do them differently, which is a great perspective to have.
Right, because you strike me as someone who has an envisioned career path, So I'm always curious to hear, the skills that somebody like yourself would pick up along the way in their journey. Yeah,
I think a lot of the skills that I picked up, especially in co-op, is how to interact with employees, how to really best serve them. Because at my core, I like to support employees so they can do the company's work, support the mission of the company. And some of the skills that I've picked up include, everything from system implementation, from orientation, team bonding, diversity and inclusion, and, making people feel safe at work. But really, at the core of it, I think I've learned how to be a person at a corporate world, how to be an employee in the best way, and how to network. That's one of the biggest things at co-op is networking.
Have you ever been able to capitalize on that?
Oh gosh, I network every day, I feel like.
I was going to say, not to sound weird, but I took a little peruse through your LinkedIn profile, and I could not believe the amount of connections you had.
I know,
you put me to shame.
It surprises me sometimes too, because
no, good for you. That's great.
Thank you. That's a really important part of co-op, and all the first years I meet some of them during the summertime, and that's one of the biggest things that I say is when you're at your co-op, have coffee chats with people, put time on their calendar, learn about them, and tell them about you. I've actually gotten 2 jobs. I'm working right now on campus, and I got that job through some random connection that I had.
Oh, no way.
At Wayfair, I knew a bunch of people that worked there and had some little connections there. So it absolutely translates in unforeseen ways. And I'm hoping when I graduate, all those connections that you were talking about, that translates into.
I have a feeling it is going to translate for you.
I hope so.
All right, so Amelia, I do want to shift gears with you a little bit, and I want to talk about your campus accomplishments. So, one of the things that I know that you've gotten involved in is you're a mosaic leader now. Can you give me there's a specific title that I know has jumbled me a little bit.
I know, it's a long one. So I'm the Community and Culture Fellow at Mosaic.
Great, and what does that entail?
So actually, this is what I was talking about earlier about networking.
Okay.
So a year ago, I was visiting the Oakland campus, and I was on a trip with WISE, actually. And I met Chris Wolfel, who operates the entrepreneurship at the Rowe Institute in Maine.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about how there's such a need for student leaders to really get together and say, how do I run a club?
Right.
A lot of people want to start a club. A lot of people really want to get involved in that sort of community. They just don't know how to do it, and they don't have the resources to say, this is what you do, then this, etc.
Yeah.
So I love orientation. Actually, at my first co-op, I did a lot of orientation, and I revamped the company's whole orientation process and oriented about 40, 50 new employees.
Okay.
So I'm very comfortable with that. And I told Chris, I was like, I'll do it. I would love to do something like that and really build out an orientation. So Mosaic is basically the parent of all entrepreneurial-based clubs on campus.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay, that's really cool. So
Yes.
WISE, would that fall under?
Yes, so WISE is a Mosaic org.
Yeah, no, speaking of WISE, you're the VP of WISE Global.
Yes.
How's that? How long have you been in that position?
So I've been at WISE for about 3 years now. In my first 2 years, I was the VP of People Operations.
Mm-hmm.
Very, the same. So we're talking about.
I'm picking up on a pattern.
Okay, just a little bit. I did that on purpose. So this is my second year I'm going into the VP of Global.
Great.
So with that, WISE has really tried to build global chapters for Northeastern.
Mm-hmm.
We've been in Boston for 5 years, and we're doing so many different programs, and we really wanted to bring that to all the different communities that we have across the globe. Mm-hmm. So last year we started in London,
Very
and we brought together a team of 4 people. So I've been managing and running all of our London operations from last year. Mm-hmm. And then this fall, actually, we're going to Oakland. So
nice.
I literally just got off an interview with someone in Oakland.
Oh, nice.
To hire that team and really bring people together, because we want to target them where they're at. And freshmen are in Oakland, they're in London, they're in Boston, and we want to be wherever they are. So that's my role, is making sure the expansion is going well, managing all of our processes and our systems, admin, students, etc.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Now, you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I'd be really interested in hearing that the skills that you developed at your 2 co-ops, or that you're currently developing at Wayfair, how can you apply them to WISE, and how can you apply them to Mosaic? At the same time, I would like to look at it, from a vice versa perspective also. I know that's a big question, but I'd be really interested in hearing that.
No, I think from the vice versa perspective first, from the vice versa perspective first, from clubs to co-op, I was in WISE at my e-board position for VP of People Operations before I started at Immuta. So I had that perspective going into it. That could not have been at a better time. WISE is so big. We have about 40 e-board members each semester, and over 1,000 community members. It operates like a little company. It really does. And I was essentially, if you want to look at it in the corporate way, the head of HR. So that was a big stepping stone. I learned so much about people operations and what HR is in the first place through working at WISE. So in those interviews, I, again, had tangible results of to say, this is what I did with WISE, this is what I can do for Immuta, etc. And it gave me that confidence for these interviews, for these positions, and so much knowledge that worked on with WISE, even with Northeastern administration, that I could bring to Immuta. Now, after Immuta, I have the corporate, the corporate insights and what Immuta was doing in terms of, for example, onboarding their employees and offboarding. And I think onboarding their employees in a corporate setting is so different, because with WISE, you know exactly when the end date is, because it's by semester. Corporate, you're hoping everyone stays forever.
Right.
So it's so much different. And at Immuta, I learned about what certain things that you really need to build up in an employee before they start really getting into the work. And I learned that you have to support people throughout their whole time. Orientation is not a one-day event. Orientation is, throughout. And I think with WISE, I really learned how to support all of our e-board members throughout their whole time at WISE, not just the first day they came.
Now, I know that we here in the Northeastern community are all very excited about the co-op program.
Yes.
And it is the 115th anniversary of the co-op program, if you can believe that. How are you planning on celebrating?
I'm going to go to work at my co-op.
I can't think of a better way.
I think that's a perfect way. And I'm going to tell everyone now. I didn't know this. This is news to me.
Oh, great.
So, I'll definitely have to share that. I'm actually a co-op captain for Wayfair.
Oh, no way.
And I'd love to, maybe even we do like a little Wayfair celebration
for
the co-op.
Why not, right?
Yeah, I think that would be great.
What's a co-op captain?
Co-op captains are a group of 6 of us who apply to do events for the whole co-op cohort. So fun events, like, sometimes go to King's Bowling, or sometimes we'll play ping pong, anything that brings all the cohort together, because there's like 88 of us. So we all need to get together at some point. So co-op captains are organizing all those events and really keeping everyone engaged.
Amazing. Well, I mean, you have the future in the palm of your hand. It's pretty clear to me. And I think that the co-op experience and your co-op experience, I loved hearing your perspective on it. Thanks. Amelia, thanks so much for taking some time out of your afternoon to speak with me today.
Tony, thank you so much. You're a great interviewer. So I'm so happy to be here.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you.